So now that we know how to make the high, make the low, and put it into Painter, and then create some form of output file that's compatible with UE4, let's go and import this into UE4, including all the textures. So I have my low poly selected. Clearly we've unwrapped it, but what we do need to do is we need to create a secondary UV channel, and that's going to allow light mass to work properly. It requires a secondary UV channel. UE4 will in some cases automatically create one, or in most cases it will automatically create one, but it won't be optimal. So it's up to you to define the secondary UV channel in an ideal world, purely because of the fact that you've got more control over it and you can define and dictate how large you want the UVs in the secondary UV channel to be. Obviously light mass is baking shadows onto this actual UV set. So that you can define in terms of the resolution. Like I said before, UE4 will automatically create a variant of the UV, but it won't be optimal, so it's necessary that you do it manually, especially when you've got something which is really complex. In this instance, it'd probably do a good job of this because there is only 4 large UV shells. It would figure it out, but nonetheless, I think it'd be useful to create your own. So all we need to do within the map channel over here is click on 2, and then in most cases you can just click on move, and now we are in the secondary UV channel, map channel 2. Remember that layout because we'll check that within UE4 at a later point. So now that that's been moved, we have 2 UV channels, and they both have unwrapped UVs for the asset, and more importantly the second UV channel should not have anything overlapping, so no overlapping on that. So let's export this back out as our low poly rock OBJ. I'm going to agree with the defaults again. Just click on export. Done. So we might as well bring in that low poly along with all the textures that we made earlier. So in this case we want the albedo, the low poly rock, the normal, and the RGB channel pack texture. I'm just going to agree with the defaults, click on import all. It may kick up a stink with some cases. No, it looks fine. I'm just going to Control S that to make sure everything's saved now that we've brought it in. I'm just going to dump my low poly rock there. I don't necessarily need that material anymore, so I might as well just get rid of that. I'm going to scale this around and move it into location, make it a bit more interesting than what it is at the moment, I suppose. And I'm just going to scale this just so we can see what's going on. That will do me for the time being. We might as well make a few variants of this, given the fact that we are ultimately going to be creating all kinds of weird and wonderful rocks and yada yada yada. So I'll just put that one there, and then finally just pump this one there, scale that down a touch, and just rotate it. That will do it. Clearly the world's greatest pile of rocks. So that will do. So we need to make a material, obviously. So right click, new material, call this rock. Double click on that and drag the textures that we've made. So we have our albedo, our normal, and our channel pack texture. Just drag them in. I'll just try and sort this out, clean it up a touch. So our albedo will go into base color. Our normal is obviously going to go into the normal. And this is our channel pack texture. So there's a few things we need to triple check before we do anything else. So I'm just going to save that. I'm just going to go back to our original RGB texture, just double click on that, and I'm going to make sure that sRGB channel is on. By default, from what I remember, it's off. Make sure it's on. So there's our rock. Just load that back up. So we need to drag our red channel, which is our roughness, into roughness. Our green channel is our metal into metallic, and our blue is our ambient occlusion, and dump that into ambient occlusion. Just click on save on there, and let's just pop that onto our asset and see what it looks like. A quick save all won't do any harm. Just drag that onto there, drag that onto there, drag that onto there, and you can see now it contains our textures that we've made in Substance, and arguably they look very similar to what we saw in Painter and what we saw in Substance. Sorry, in Marmoset. Naturally, they will look in some ways different because lighting. So you're going to have a different HDRI image being used in Substance Painter in relation to Marmoset, and clearly this here is trying to use this form of the lighting that's in this particular scene. So this is just one of my testbed scenes which I will just use to knock up simple shapes, assets, just to test them, make sure everything's good to go. So I've just tried to self-contain it really. All pretty boring stuff, but there you go. So there we are, that's how we do our rocks. If we were to add some additional functionality to this, so clearly you can see that it's a bit, the roughness values probably need adjusting in some cases, yeah. There's probably nothing metallic going on, so the metallic channel will probably be blank. But the roughness here is, you can see that it's a bit too shiny in some cases. It probably, to be fair, it does work, but there's areas where I think, maybe we could possibly dull that down. So a quick way to do that, rather than go in there and rebake everything out, is just use scalar parameters within our materials in UE4. So I'm just going to double click our material again. I'm going to disconnect our roughness channel, and I'm going to press M for multiply and S for scalar. I'm just going to drag now my red channel into the A input and the multiply, and the scalar parameter, at the moment there's a little box there that says none. I'm just going to call this rough, and then I'm going to drag that into the B channel, or the B input of our multiply, and then this is going to go back into our roughness. So with this now, it's going to allow us to put some parameters, some values in there to control the roughness levels. So if I just double click on that, we've named it, we'll give it a minimum value of 0 and a maximum value of 5, and then just save that. In order for this to work, we need to instance this material. So just right click, create material instance, rock parameters, call it whatever you want, something applicable, we might as well save again. So what we do need to do is drag this onto these particular assets. Otherwise, if it's still using the rock, any changes we make to this won't appear on there. So what you can see is it's more or less the same as our bog standard rock setup on here, but what we can see is it gives us the option to, within the scalar parameters, we've created our rough, and then we can just adjust the sliders on this and change the roughness value of our material. And you can apply this to any of those input nodes as such. Obviously the albedo is not going to do a great deal, but you could be clever, and in some cases you might want to control the normal map a tad further, and rather than bake out the whole thing again, you can just set it up as a scalar parameter going into a multiply, and then you can control that independently and hopefully get things looking just a bit better than they might have been or not been otherwise. So press save on that. Let's just triple check to make sure that our secondary UV channel was evident, and double click on that. Probably should click on that and then assign that to there as well, so we can see what's going on over here. Now what we do need to do within this is just triple check to make sure our UVs have been set up correctly. So there's UV channel 0 and UV channel 1. So it looks like those are fine. If anything, it would probably indicate that this hasn't baked across our UV our unwrap that we did at that point there. So it may be the case that I've imported it as an OBJ and it hasn't retained that information. So most probably I should have dragged that in as an FBX. I think that should have resolved the issue. So that in essence is how to take something simple within Substance Painter and ultimately dump it into UE4 with all the necessary textures. So in the next few tutorials we'll attempt to do the same thing, but we'll look at some varying other assets and just try and get that procedure nailed to the point where everybody's comfortable making a high, making a low, being clever with how they generate the modifier stack to be able to switch on and off, and then ultimately pump it into Painter, output the textures correctly, allow us to put it into Marmoset for any beauty shot purposes, and then finally pop it into UE4 with a nice channel pack texture, and ultimately controlling it via some additional scalar parameters. What I've done is just re-imported our rock. This time I've used FBX, and if I just turn on my UV channels, UV channel 0 is fine, UV channel 1 is our secondary UV channel, so it has worked in that case. So don't use OBJ. I used OBJ because I'd taken the file that was compatible with Marmoset and I've utilised that. Clearly that isn't correct, so make sure you use FBX.